Will we ever know if this is why it happened, because of the parent company in the merger? No, but also yes. Because you know why? You don't kill your cash cow. I mean, TV is losing money across networks, and that's the trend that we're going. But Stephen Colbert is number one and has been for a long time. Also, Stephen Colbert
is losing $40 million a year.
Every show is losing money. It's still making them plenty of money in ad revenue every year.
Wait a minute. Every show's losing money, but it's still making them money? I'm sorry, what? Something doesn't add up. And welcome to Tuesday. And double speak again, more Orwellian language out of the liberal minds that have apparently been pushed to the limits. My goodness, what a day yesterday was. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on the Chris Plant Show. And the left is having a hard time again with reality and math and common sense and stuff like that. The announcement of Stephen Colbert's cancellation, the Late Show's cancellation, is just stressing some of the, I wanted to call them creative brains. Some of them are very creative, but it just seems to be pushing the limits of logic in the minds of these people. I still don't know how Colbert and company are going to make it till next May. I really don't. If this is the first reaction, it kind of feels like we need to be getting out Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book to go through the stages of grief. On Death and Dying was the book, in case you're wondering. You probably read it or avoided reading it in high school or your freshman year in college. But, First, you're denying what's going on, and now I think we're in the anger stage right now. Has acceptance happened yet? I don't know. But there was just a mountain of madness yesterday. And we'll have some fun with that because there is ample fun to be had. But there are other stories that are out there this morning, even a little breaking news this morning. The Department of Justice has apparently started reaching out and trying to decide if they're going to have a sit-down with Ghislaine Maxwell to see if she has anything to add to this Epstein file story, which it's not going away. And I'm one of the people that is hoping that this administration can find a way to get all this out, to get it past everybody's minds, because now that the left, and I'm talking about the Democrats and their buddies in the media, now that the left has realized that this is chum in the water, as it were, they're going to continue going after it. Every question you ask Hakeem Jeffries as he's karate chopping the air with his answer somehow gets back to Trump and Epstein. Somehow. Every single question. You could ask him what he thinks about the odds of the United States winning the World Cup next year, and he would somehow get back to Donald Trump and Epstein, guaranteed. And the deep fakes that are out there. Yesterday there was a picture floating around the social media empires that showed Donald Trump with a very young girl, and it turns out that was Bravo Sierra. That was a very well photoshopped image. So it's oftentimes hard to understand what's true and what's not. And as Chris has often quoted, the truth is trying to get out of bed and put its pants on, but the lie has already been halfway around the world. And that is the reality. So we'll see what happens with the Epstein files. Speaker Mike Johnson has said, no, we're not going to have a vote on that till after the recess. And I know that the president's least favorite Republican, Thomas Massie, from the 1st District in Kentucky, is trying to push a bipartisan piece of legislation that would get the files released. And it's not making the president happy at all. In fact, he's promised to find a candidate to challenge Representative Massie. And I happen to like Massie. I think he's a good man, good brain. He's more libertarian than anything else. So I'm hoping we find common ground on this. I really do. Anyway, you want to be part of the show today, you can. 630-9625, 888-630-9625. Do you feel like we should just rip the Band-Aid off and get the Epstein files out there? If you do anything else, if the administration does anything but kowtow to the media and the Democrats' demands on this, all they say is you're blocking everything. I know there's a meeting today at 11 o'clock with the Philippine leader. And what is the left going to say? They're going to ask questions because the president likes to hold forth when he has world leaders in the Oval Office, and that'll probably happen. And the minute somebody gets a chance to ask a question, someone's going to ask about the Epstein files. And if he doesn't answer it, then there will be a leap to this is just a cover-up. Yesterday, there was a massive release of documents about Martin Luther King Jr., about 230,000 pages. And I have a buddy who wrote a book about Dr. King's assassination called Killing the Dream. And I got a message from him yesterday. I said, don't bother me for a couple of days. I only have 230,000 pages to get through. And I went, oh, my God. And immediately the left says, well, this is going to be used to distract. This is obfuscation. Don't think that's true. And I don't know if we're going to learn anything new, but we'll see. We shall see. So I'm hoping, in my mind, I would like to see as much information about the Epstein files available to the public as possible. Of course, there are people whose lives need to be protected, victims whose lives need to be protected. But if someone was engaging in pedophilia, let's put it correctly, that person, those people do not deserve any protection. So I don't know what's to be gained by talking to Ghislaine Maxwell. She and her attorneys have been asking for some time to have a sit down, and the DOJ prosecutors reached out today, and we'll see what happens on that one. There was also a hearing yesterday regarding the Trump administration's pulling of research funds from Harvard. I think it's about $2.6 billion in research funds from Harvard. And we'll see if we get a decision on that today. The administration said, why should we be forced to give money to this university that is got anti-Semitic issues? And I did hear some of the arguments from the judge yesterday saying, well, what does medical research have to do with anti-Semitism? Are you going to now make that same argument and say that there were, this sounds like the person who said, well, Hitler did some good things. No, you can't. You can't. So we'll see what happens on that. Also, tragedy in Costa Rica. I know a lot of you say you grew up on the Cosby Show before we knew Bill Cosby was a freak and a creep. One of the stars of the Cosby Show, Malcolm Jamal Warner, played Theo. I tuned in to watch a little bit of Morning Joe this morning just to check in, to see if they were saying anything stupid. Of course they were. But they were reporting on the death of Malcolm Jamal Warner, and the Morning Joe cast, which includes, of course, liberal America's first couple, Joe and Mika, and of course, Al Sharpton. I wonder if Sharpton and Joe ever go out socially. I'll bet you they don't. I would put good money down that this is all just a fake friendship on air. But they also have this reporter, Katty Kay, a British lady. And in the Katty Kay world, she was reporting on the Malcolm Jamal Warner death. He died tragically drowning in Costa Rica. A riptide got him, and it's just a horrible tragedy. The guy leaves a wife and a daughter. Sad story. But she kept saying he played Theodore on the Cosby Show. He was never Theodore. He was Theo. Just can we get people that understand what they're talking about? Please help us. But that's a sad story, very sad story. There's also news, a couple of crazy things that we have to talk about today. I do think some of the Hunter Biden story, which we'll get to, We need to give Michael Piercy's bleep finger a rest. He had to go through the latest from Hunter Biden, who's now got a couple of podcasts floating out there, the one At Our Table with the former DNC chair, and this other one with this crazy guy sitting under a tree. I think the Democrats were looking for their Joe Rogan. But there was so much bleeping that needs to go on. We got to talk about the statements about cocaine and crack, invading El Salvador. Ambien is now a new excuse for why Joe lost the debate against Trump. There's so much there. And then the bleeping of the Colbert and Epstein stuff, or the Colbert and Stewart stuff. We have to get to that. But under the radar, there are some Democrat candidates that I think are starting to bubble up under the radar. So we will get to all these topics as well. And as I said, Hakeem Jeffries karate chop in the air and saying dumb things again. But the phones are lighting up today. Let's see what's on your mind this morning. 888-630-9625. Chuck's in Reston, Virginia. Good morning, Chuck. Welcome to the Chris Plante Show.
Hey, good morning. Listen, on this Epstein thing, Trump plays 4D chess, and I sometimes wonder if maybe he's playing the Democrats. If the Justice Department, whomever, had come out with a bunch of stuff about Epstein, the left would have been pushing it away because most of them are named. But by Trump pretending like there's nothing there, he's got the Democrats clamoring for the info to come out. Trump disavowed Epstein back in, 2005?
Yeah, at Mar-a-Lago when he threw him out, right?
Yeah, exactly. Threw him out, called him a creep. And we know most of the people named on the whatever lists do exist are Democrats. So maybe he's just getting the Democrats to froth and say, we need more and we need more. And finally Trump and the Justice Department say, okay, you asked for it, here you go, and it's you. So that's just my theory.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that's happening. But this is one of those situations, Chuck, when I look at this and I go, okay, you've got them all. You've got them all lined up coming at you. And you're waiting. Yeah. You're in the foxhole. They can't see you. You're camouflaged. And you've got the machine guns, the information machine guns. I don't want the left to say Opelka's talking about mowing down Democrats. No. You've got the informational machine guns all hidden behind camouflage. How soon before we release all the information? I'm just waiting for it. At least I hope that's what's happening. We'll see what happens. Maybe we'll both be right. Thank you, Chuck. Let's go to Chris in Marshall, Virginia. Hello, Chris. Welcome to the Chris Plante Show.
Good morning, sir. I've got an opinion on this. It's going to go over like a pork chop in a synagogue.
Okay.
But everybody's clamoring for this information. We have been shown again and again that broadcasting degeneracy has no negative effect on the degenerate. Look at Project Veritas, O'Keefe's entire career. Look at the Twitter files. Again, look at the Panama Papers. Again and again and again, we get these lists of these people. I put it to you, if Dan Goldman were irrefutably proven to have committed heinous crimes, not one person in our listening audience would go get rid of their Levi's jeans, and they wouldn't not buy a pair of Levi's. It won't affect him at all.
This is a very interesting take, and I'm not mad at you for it at all. I don't totally disagree with you. And we have prime examples of people being shown that politicians and elected officials are absolutely ignorant or weaselly, and yet they keep getting elected. Case in point for me is the guy out of Georgia, the guy who thought Guam was going to tip over, Hank Johnson. He keeps, but the people in his district keep electing him. The rest of the country is laughing at him every single day. And I don't know who bought him a guitar, but it's just giving us more material. So that's a very fair point and a good point, sir. We'll see what happens. Maybe there is a tipping point where the public finally says, all right, we're going to put some standards back into who represents us. We're going to have some sort of point where we say, we can hate the sin, but we can also hate the sinner. That's one of those things that may happen. We'll continue the discussions. It's going to be a very busy day. It's Mike Opelka. That's me. In for my friend Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
My fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris.
It is the Chris Plant Show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Mike Opelka, sitting in for the vacationing, the cruising Chris Plant. He's kind of vacationing, but he is spending time with many of the listeners, and they are, working, having conversations and happy hours. That's work, right? Sure. Chris will be back next week, next Tuesday. Just breaking news, coming out. Now, we talked about this since last week. President Trump was pushing the Coca-Cola company to get rid of the high fructose corn syrup in its very popular Coca-Cola and return to using cane sugar or some kind of, just good old-fashioned sugar. And MSNBC is reporting that Coca-Cola has announced that they are, in fact, going to have a version of its Coca-Cola using cane sugar available here in America. Well, I can buy it here in America, but it's made in Mexico, and that's my gripe. Coca-Cola, are you going to make it here in America? Well, they're kind of hinting that they're going to keep the high fructose corn syrup Coca-Cola and just, I guess, add a new version, which is really the old version, which tastes better. I hope we do a taste test. High fructose corn syrup Coke next to the Coca-Cola with cane sugar. What are they going to call it? That's the question Michael Pearson and I were banding about during the break. What are they going to call it? You can't call it New Coke because then we'll go back to that debacle in the 80s. And you can't call it Coke Original because they've been calling the current Coca-Cola the original flavor. So if it's cane sugar, can we just call it cocaine? A lot of people would buy it just for the joke. Just saying. I know. That's a long way to go for that. But that's the reality. I think this is good news. I hope Coca-Cola is going to make it here in America and not just import it from Mexico. And I really don't think it's fair to charge more for the Coca-Cola with cane sugar than you charge for the Coca-Cola with high fructose corn syrup, which we all know ain't good for you. Come on now. Let's get Robert Kennedy Jr. involved in this. All right, it's Michael Opelka in for Chris Plant. We'll get back to the phones here in a minute. 888-630-9625, 888-630-9625. It is the Chris Plant Show. It is the Chris Plant Show, and no, it's not St. Patrick's Day. It's just up-tempo music. It's Michael Opelka in for my buddy Chris Plant, and we have so much to get to today. We're just talking about the Coca-Cola announcement that they are, in fact, going to put out or return to making their famous soft drink using cane sugar once again. I hope it happens soon. I do purchase. We don't drink Coca-Cola every day. My wife and I might have one or two Cokes a week. And yes, with the sugar, we buy the ones that are made in Mexico and being sold at a premium because they taste better. And cane sugar, maybe not good for you, but it's not as bad for you as the high fructose corn syrup. It's just a lot cheaper. That's why it's been going on for years and years and years. And we've been talking a little bit about the latest news as regards to the Epstein files. Still not released. There's still a tug of war going on inside the Republican Party. Democrats are kind of standing back and pointing at it and saying, oh, you better release all these. Meanwhile, they did nothing to release these files while they were in charge. But interesting point made by one of you in the vast and unpaid resource department listening to this show, sending a message on social media. It's great that Congress is seeking the names of other Epstein pedophiles who might be in government and subject to extortion. Yes, that is one of the concerns. And remember Fang Fang, where we were concerned that if Chinese spies, Chinese honeypots had gotten a hold of members of Congress or senators, maybe driving senators around for 20 years, Senator Feinstein, that they could be an asset to our enemies. These are things of great concern. But the question is raised by Barton Fairfax on Twitter, X. Did Congress ever release the names of those who settled sexual misconduct allegations with taxpayer funds while in the House and Senate? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't that just be great? And we've heard for years that the Congress, the House and the Senate, had this slush fund of your money, of my money, that was used to settle allegations brought against members of Congress. I want it all out there. It all needs to be exposed. It all needs to be given the sunshine treatment, which would be good. Phones just have been hopping today, 888-630-9625. Let's get to a couple of these and talk about it. Phil's in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Hello, Phil. Welcome to the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Mr. Opaka, the Mark Twain of WMAL returns. It's always good to talk to you and listen to you. Look, when Trump made the statement, he said the half of MAGA that's asking for the release of the Epstein files, I don't need their support. When he said that, he made me so angry I couldn't see straight. And the reason it makes me angry is because I'm a Virginia citizen, and we're about to lose this state to the Democrats. We need Winsome Sears to win. It's a very crucial time to get our government and our people together to stop these leftist Democrats. And making statements like that ain't helping nothing, President Trump. Please watch what you say and how you say it.
Yeah, that's a very fair point, especially as it relates to local elections. And that is really something that has a lot of us concerned and hoping that can be Winsome Sears can pull off the miracle in Virginia. But right now the polls aren't exactly tilting that direction. And I do think presidential involvement in that election could be a big help. And let's hope maybe the president's keeping his powder dry on that subject for a bit. But thank you, Phil. Appreciate you calling. I get that. Look, we like that we've been loyal to a president who's lived up to his promises. And I don't think any of us like to be called names when we dare to raise a question. I think it's okay. We talk about the fact that the Democrats are little penguins and they march in lockstep with one another, and that we need to be more unified. But sometimes it requires us to be able to accept a different opinion and allow the discussion to happen at the end of the day. Also joining us, 888-630-9625, Victor in Silver Spring, Maryland. Victor, welcome to the Chris Plant Show.
Thank you. I am more interested in what's going on with Obama. I want a complete and thorough investigation about what he did and what he didn't do when he was in office. I remember how extremely rude he was to Benjamin Netanyahu, made him sit while he did something else, made him go outside the back door where the garbage cans were. He was really nasty when he was in office, and I can't wait for him to get in some real hot water, if you know what I mean.
Well, I'd be interested in seeing the investigation into all of the things that DNI Gabbard has been releasing. I would like to see every bit of that information come out to understand the whole story. But I also wonder, and many are speculating now, whether the president, the immunity afforded to presidents will extend to Barack Obama as a past president, if he can say he was acting as president, doing the job the people had elected him to do before Donald Trump was inaugurated. We'll see. I would like to see it investigated. But, Victor, here's the other thing. Congress is pretty damn big. You got 100 senators. You got 435 members of the House. I think they can do more than one thing at a time. You know, they should be doing several things. We're paying them to do that. So I'm hoping that we'll get more action on several topics as we're moving forward, because we do have a lot of things to do. And I have a couple of suggestions as well, but thank you. We'll see what happens. Let's go to Craig, listening through the WMAL app, our flagship station in D.C. on Long Island. Hello, Craig. Welcome to the Chris Plante Show.
Hey, Mike. Hey,
what's up,
real
sir?
Quick. This is my response to the guy who spoke a few minutes ago about Levi's and Dan Goldman. And I looked it up, and I had no idea that he was the heir to the Levi Strauss Corporation. And I told your screener, I don't know about other people, but I would never accept Levi's. I'd never buy Levi's. That's it. And there are people like me out there that stand by our principles, because if you don't, then you're just like everyone else. It's just another phony affront, and I'm offended, and it's a one-day walk, through the campus. I'm telling you, I have Levi's. I don't want them. I'll get rid of them. I'll donate them. I can't stand him. He's a gutless, ruthless human being, and you do have to have principles. And I just wanted to point out to your caller that, there's a lot of people that'll stand by what they believe in.
I thank you for that, Craig. Craig, that's a really good point. And, we don't talk about, at least I don't talk about boycotting things. I like to talk about boycotting. I think it's important for us to flex our economic power by utilizing our dollars and spending them with companies that think like us and work like us. If we go back to Levi's, I got to do a little research on this during the next break. I seem to recall that the president of Levi's, I believe it was a woman at the time, walked away from the company because they were getting too deep into the DEI stuff. I'm not sure, but I have to look at that because I think that's what's happened. Now, before you can donate your Levi's, Craig, that's great. You can give them to Goodwill or whatever clothing donation thing you want. But as a capitalist, I would encourage you maybe to see if your Levi's aren't valuable. They used to sell online, especially if they're older Levi's. I couldn't believe how much money they were going for. People were paying big bucks for the older Levi's jeans with the red tag on them. And so maybe you sell them and give, 10%, 20% to charity. You can do good things in both ways, because there's probably a bunch of liberals out there in the Goldman fan club who are looking to buy them. But great point. Excellent point, sir. There's so much out there that we need to understand about our elected officials. There was one suggestion made years ago. I can't believe I'm going to actually endorse this, by Harry Reid. Remember Harry Reid, the guy who got beat up by his treadmill, or so we were told? Harry Reid made a suggestion, and I'm not against this. I kind of think it could be interesting. Harry Reid made a suggestion that every member of Congress should have to wear patches on their clothing that shows their donations. Now, I think that's a really interesting idea, because if we could see who is funding the people that are running the government, if we could say, and the size of the patch, the size of the logo would be an indication of how much money they gave. Wouldn't it be interesting? I just think some of these members would look like NASCAR drivers walking around. And yes, thanks to the great Jeff Wolf, back in 2022, on Valentine's Day of 2022, oddly enough, the president of Levi's walked away from a $1 million severance package, quit her job, walked away from a $1 million severance package so she would be free to speak out against school closures during COVID. I was wrong. It wasn't about DEI. But this very brave lady, Jennifer Say, quit her job as the president of Levi's. More than 20 years she worked there, saying she quit so she could be free. She talked about her experience of working at Levi's, but after the COVID pandemic shut down schools, she became a big, outspoken person talking about keeping them open. She has 4 kids. And she claimed in the statements that she made, and this is posted in Fortune magazine back in 2022, that the company wanted her to stop speaking out on political issues. Isn't that interesting? The company wanted her to stop speaking out on political issues, yet the heir to the Levi's fortune is in Congress. And all he does is speak out on political issues. Double standards? Possibly. She walked away from a CEO gig and $1 million parachute. That shows you, that takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of pelotas. Absolutely a huge deal. So well done. Well done, Ms. Say. 20 years she was with them. 20 stinking years. Great job. Really great job. It's a powerful message. You know, we don't always get these messages, but that was great. Absolutely wonderful stuff. We do have to cover a lot more things today. I have some remarkable Hunter Biden audio that we will get to, and I'm saying it's remarkable from the standpoint of what Hunter Biden is saying and the message he's trying to give to people and where he's trying to place blame these days. I guess when you suddenly can't bilk the rest of the world for millions and millions of dollars, and since you're trying to stay clean and sober, you don't have a way to, release all the stress in your life. You got to start blaming people. So there's new Hunter Biden stuff, and it's also had to be bleeped extensively. And there's some huge stuff that came out of the aftermath of the firing of Stephen Colbert, which still amazes me because when I'm fired from a job, I don't get to stay on the air for the next 10 months. It's not the case when you're a liberal and you're on CBS. You'll be surprised when you hear from Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart, who sure sounds like he's a little bit nervous. Plus, remember all the people who said, and they were on the mainstream media's left side, the people who said that Donald Trump's bombing of the Iranian enrichment facility was unsuccessful? Well, the Iranians are talking. They're telling the truth. We'll get to that as well. And your calls, 888-630-9625. It's Mike Opelka for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show. Welcome back to The Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant. And I tell you, I'm looking at this. We're wrapping up the first hour. I don't know how we're going to get everything in the next hour, the next 2 hours of the show. I've got 3 pounds of show to put into a 2-pound bag. I don't know how I'm going to do it. We'll try. We will try. One of the things that we're going to talk about is who might be the Democrats' nominee going forward. I know that many of us in the conservative world have looked at the bench that the GOP has and said, okay, you got the Vice President Vance doing a pretty darn good job. A lot of people feel pretty comfortable about J.D. Vance as a possible 2028 candidate. And you got Marco Rubio, who's crushing it as Secretary of State. And a lot of people are thinking, that'd be a pretty good choice. And there are even some people who are saying, this Tulsi Gabbard, who we stole from the Democrats a few years back, and she's doing a pretty good job. She might be somebody who could step up there. There are a host of potential candidates. And then over on the left side, you have the usual suspects. You have Mayor Pete that the left is talking about. You have Kamala Harris, who yesterday was unintentionally reminding the world that it was the 1-year anniversary of her run for president beginning. Yeah, yesterday was the anniversary, the one-year anniversary of the day that Joe Biden stepped aside and, made sure that there wouldn't be any Democrat voter choice in who would be their candidate. No, it was only going to be Joe's pick of Kamala. And so she was celebrating that yesterday, and some of the responses to her egomaniacal post are just hilarious. But we also have some interesting candidates, and we should talk about this coming up. Who do you think is going to be the Democrat nominee? Because you've got the outside. I think the Democrats keep thinking we've got to find a Trump. We've got to find somebody who's not a D.C. insider because everybody's sick and tired of the D.C. insiders. Yes, we are. And most of you, we're sick of most of you. So they're feverishly looking outside, and you've got people like the sportscaster Stephen A. Smith, who puts a good sentence together, but I honestly don't know if he'd be a good president. He's got no experience in leadership. And then you've got some of the usual suspects popping up. You've got the governors like Josh Shapiro out of Pennsylvania, who's got a lot of bipartisan support in a state that went for Trump in the last election. So is that a possibility? And then you've got suddenly AOC, people are saying, well, she's telegenic. If New York could actually elect this guy Mamdani just because he's telegenic and he wants the socialism and the New York people want there's a whole bunch to consider. And one of the people that's really surprised me of late, who I don't know if he's got a snowball's chance in hell, is Beto O'Rourke. Remember Beto? His name isn't Beto. That's the name the maid gave him. The Latino maid gave him. He's a silver spoon in the mouth rich kid. And he's back, and he's got something to say. And I'll have to share it with you because he's kind of hinting that America's about to experience a civil war. So I'm just wondering where you think we're going with this. Who's it going to be? Who's going to be the Dem nominee in 2028? We're pretty safe to say that the nominee from the GOP is going to be from some of the people currently involved in the Trump administration because things are moving along pretty good. But, it's a long ways away. We're 469 days away from the midterms, and I know that's what people are focused on. But I'm looking ahead. I'm looking ahead to the 2028 election. And no, Donald Trump's not going to still be there. But now, Donald Trump Jr.? No, that can't happen. We'll get to all of it. 888-630-9625. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.